Greetings, Path Seekers! Today I want to talk about something that I misunderstood when I was getting into RCs for the first time. This was my very first RC. Okay, not the very first RC ever, but my first crawler, my first serious RC. And it's a Gladiator, which is longer than the normal wheelbase, the JLU. It is, I mean to be exact, it's that much longer. That is how, wow, it's actually a lot wider too because I got these Super 8s on here. But if we line up the rear wheels, you can see it is that much longer. Now that makes a difference. But all at the same time, it doesn't make as much difference as you would think. And if you're starting out, you might wonder, which should you pick? Should you go with a short one? Should you go with a long one? Is the longer one a better crawler overall? Is the shorter one more adaptable to different situations? There are positives and negatives to both wheelbases. Some people will actually declare that one is better than the other and that it's always going to do better, and that, I mean, I've seen people who think that this shouldn't even exist, and that they said they bought one, didn't like it, and just ended up selling it, which if you don't like the rig, I mean, it's all about having fun with it, so I'm not going to tell you you have to have one. But I was under the impression when I got into RCs that the longer wheelbase was going to be better. So a longer vehicle is more stable while going uphill because it changes the center of gravity, and you also are going to have more time to react if the vehicle starts to flip over. So in a sense, it's actually much safer, especially in real life. And it is true that a longer wheelbase does go better up a hill. But something I didn't understand was that going with a Gladiator, there are major disadvantages and there are advantages to having this. What's more, just because this isn't as good at climbing, there is an advantage to climbing with this. The short wheelbases can climb really, really, really well. And I just didn't understand that. You say that's just because you're a beginner. Well, I'm not doing this for you, Mr. Expert that's watching. I'm doing this for other beginners who are thinking about buying one of these. And I went back and forth a bunch. I mean, I like the look of the JLUs, but do I want the shorter one or do I want the longer one? You know what I mean? And I'm going to inlay a whole bunch of videos. I ran 4 different trucks. So we have my tan Gladiator, we have my brother's blue Gladiator, we have this JLU, and then there's my dad's Blazer. And the Blazer is a short wheelbase, but it also has an advantage because it is a deadbolt, so the skid plate is actually forwards just a couple of millimeters, which could be helping its climbing capabilities. So I'm going to roll in the clips of us doing 5 different obstacles with 2 wheelbases each. And you can see that the shorter wheelbase, this one doesn't do really well on the climbs because it has stock tires and it doesn't have any brass on it. But the Blazer, that has the same tires as the blue Gladiator, and it has brass up front and a brass diff cover on the rear, it can climb. This truck, this one has Super 8 axles under it, so it's very wide. And I know that I have to hit it just right or I'll slide off the side. But there we go. Now, that sheer rock face that I'm showing you right now, I have had many rigs be able to make that line, both short and longer wheelbases. The Bronco's chassis with the soft body on top is able to make that climb itself. But with the shorter wheelbases, I do flip off more. It is harder to do it. All right, so let's try this obstacle with the blue Gladiator. Now this one has super soft tires because they're vented and they have no foams, and it has Proline shocks which take all of the bouncing out of the action. We are caught on the bumper. That's not going to help us. I got to line this up just right. This is one of the hardest lines around here. There we go. You just need a hop. And up we go. So before we jump to the conclusion that a Gladiator is just automatically a better climber, this Gladiator, while highly upgraded, can really struggle on this hill because it doesn't have the same shocks and flips off a whole bunch. Meanwhile, the Blazer, on its second attempt, was able to make the same climb. You'll find on my channel there was a comparison video where I compared this stock rig to this upgraded rig. It didn't have the Super 8 axles on it at the time, but I did do it nevertheless on a muddy hill climb. And this I had to try a whole bunch of times, but it did do it. So it is simply less forgiving. You still can do it, you can use it, you can climb with it. It is just slightly less forgiving. And actually, watching the blue Gladiator go up that one is the best at this steep rock face climb that I'm showing you again. I think the shocks are actually making the biggest difference on that, because with the shocks on, it absorbs all of the bounce and it just makes it cling to the rocks, because my Gladiator has the same wheelbase and actually has a huge advantage in far more track width. I have 21 millimeters wider of a track width on my Gladiator. That's a serious advantage over the blue one, but the blue one does it better because it doesn't bounce off of the rocks. It sticks to it. That tree is going to fall on me. But the blue Gladiator sticks to it because of its shocks. So climbing ability is more about weight, bias, traction, and shocks and dampening than it is wheelbase. Now, a longer wheelbase does help, but that doesn't mean that the shorter ones can't climb. I was under the impression that these were going to be not so great at climbing. They are great at climbing. They climb phenomenally. Does this one climb better? Yes, but there are disadvantages to these as well. So let me show you what happens when we run all four rigs through the Gatekeeper Canyon. When we run them through the Gatekeeper, you're going to notice the shorter wheelbase, the bumper does get stuck on the Jeep, but the shorter wheelbase Blazer especially cruises over that rock. It doesn't even really hit the underbelly. High clearance links are also helping. So I haven't tried high clearance links yet on the Gladiator, but maybe they will help with this. Because the bane of a Gladiator's existence is high centering. Getting something stuck under your skid plate in the middle and none of your wheels are touching the ground. Now in the Gatekeeper, we can get through it. We just need a little wiggle of the steering and it'll slide off to the side. You'll get by it just like you're watching now. However, there are other times where the shorter wheelbase trucks can do things that the longer ones can't. For instance, I'm going to show you a video of an obstacle I made out of shoes within my own house. And the Blazer is the only one that could actually clear that obstacle because it's a shorter wheelbase, so its wheels just lined up. And this is another problem entirely. There are times when you're climbing a ledge with both your front and rear tires, and no matter what your wheelbase is, that's a problem. But on some obstacles, it will catch a short wheelbase, and on some obstacles, it will catch a long wheelbase. That's just a problem, okay? So longer doesn't even really mean you're going to hit less of those hiccups where you need to climb two ledges at once. It just means you hit different hiccups. What's more, here's just crawling over one single rock. The Gladiators hit more, especially mine. Maybe it's because I have mine riding lower because I have long travel shocks and I'm trying to be able to get the most travel out of them but stay the lowest so I can have the best side hilling. This thing does side hill okay. But you're going to notice the shorter wheelbase trucks don't hit because they have less space between the wheels. You see, we need an object this big, narrower than this, and taller than this, and we will high center on this. But with this one, we need an object narrower than this and taller than this, and we can high center. This is a lot easier to find because we can high center on much larger objects. You're going to need a smaller, pointier rock if you're going to high center the shorter wheelbase trucks. And another thing is that a shorter wheelbase truck literally fits places in tight situations down between rocks, like in a small canyon. The smaller trucks have an easier time of maneuvering, and sometimes they can hit lines that a bigger one might not be able to, a longer one, because they have the room to maneuver. So there are advantages and disadvantages, like I said. Do not fall prey to the idea that just because the rig is shorter means that it can't climb or that it is overall a worse vehicle. This is kind of what I fell into. And I have since been proven dead wrong, because a shorter wheelbase truck can often do really serious climbs. You just need the experience and to hit the line just right, or you can just keep upgrading it. But I guess I'm trying to say, if you are worried about the performance of the shorter wheelbase trucks, don't be. If you like the look of the shorter ones, go with the shorter ones. If you like the look of the longer ones, the maneuverability and high centering can be avoided if you drive carefully.
High centered. Now I can get over this because I know how to drive, but here's what you got to do. A little bump.
Your driving skill is going to make far more of a difference than the rig that you choose. I mean, it's as simple as that. Just having experience and knowing how your rig is going to handle is going to make a difference. So, the misconception that I fell into, that a shorter rig would be worse or that it wouldn't climb well. Shorter rigs do climb well, and they are not worse rock crawlers. I do not think so. They are just different rock crawlers. A lot of people like the slightly longer, I hear them say this for the competition builds, and I'm going to try this eventually because I have the parts. They like to run a C10 front, which the C10 is the same as all the JLUs. So you run a standard linkage on the front and you run a slightly longer deadbolt linkage on the rear, because the deadbolt, again, it's moved up, so you have shorter links on the front, longer on the back. And that gives you a wheelbase between a Gladiator and a JLU. So that's an interesting thought, because then you have kind of the middle of the road, less high centering, more hill climbing ability. Frankly, I love the way the Blazer drives, the built deadbolt. That might be my favorite truck to drive. And it's not just because of what it looks like and because my dad used to own that real truck in real life. There's just something about it, the way it goes over rocks, the way it breaks over. We were up in Berlin, Ohio, and at a motel. I'll show you this clip where we're going over the ledge, right? You'll see the Blue Gladiator, which is phenomenal at climbing. It's so long, it kind of gets stuck in the middle moment where your wheels aren't doing anything and he has to scrape his lower linkages across. But with the high clearance linkage and the shorter wheelbase of the Blazer, it cruised over it. Okay? So you're going to have to pick your poison. Are you more worried about high centering, or are you more worried about climbing? Frankly, I like to own both. I think both are phenomenal. Both have their pluses and their minuses. I'm more worried about building a rig that looks like what I want it to look like than I am worrying about how long the wheelbase is. Because it's not that it's irrelevant. It does make a difference. But the point is, both are still usable. They are just going to handle differently in different situations. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. I'm just trying to help people who are beginning understand the things that I did not understand. So if you are really worried about climbing ability, the Gladiator or maybe the Power Wagon will help. Power Wagon's a hard body, though. I'm not sure. You guys tell me in the comments, how does a Power Wagon climb compared to a Gladiator? That's an interesting comparison I haven't tried yet. And what is your favorite wheelbase, and why do you like it that way? Do you prefer it longer? Do you prefer it shorter? Do you get more frustrated with high centering or with flipping off of the hill? Frankly, I think it looks cooler to flip off of a hill because it was too steep than it does to get high centered. So if I was trying to show off, I think I might go with a shorter wheelbase. But the choice is yours. What's most important is that you, one, stick around. Find a way to do it. And I'm not going to tell you how to do that because I believe you're smart enough to figure that out on your own. But two, stick to the old paths, guys.